In the heart of the Milky Way floated the shimmering planet of Zira, a world wrapped in violet skies and forests of silver trees. The air hummed with soft energy, and rivers glowed with gentle light. This was the home of Queen Lyra, a ruler unlike any other. She stood tall, with skin like pale moonstone and eyes that shimmered like twin stars. Her voice carried calm, and her presence brought peace to all who stood near. For many years, suitors came from across the galaxy hoping to win her hand. They arrived in grand ships wearing armor or robes of power. Some brought gifts of rare crystals. Others offered armies or ancient knowledge. But Lyra turned them all away, not because they were unworthy, but because they sought her for what she had, not for who she was. One morning, as the twin suns rose over the crystal spires of her palace, Lyra made a decision. She walked into the grand hall of mirrors, a place where truth could not hide, and called for silence. The court fell still as she held up a small black box no bigger than a human hand. It was made of obsidian, smooth and cool, with strange runes carved into its surface. "If you can unlock this box, I will marry you," she said. Her voice clear and steady, a murmur rippled through the crowd. No one knew what was inside the box, but old tales claimed it held the soul of Zira itself. Others said it was empty, and that the challenge was a test of wisdom, not strength. Word of the Queen's challenge spread fast across star systems within. Day's ships of every shape and color landed on Zira. Warriors from the Iron Clans brought plasma cutters and sonic drills. Scholars from the Nebula Alliance used logic grids and memory crystals. Even mystics from the Void sang ancient chants, hoping to awaken the box's secret, but nothing worked. The box stayed shut, silent and unmoved. Among the many who came was a young woman named Claire. She was human, from a small coastal town on Earth where she fixed broken machines and watched the stars. From her rooftop she wore simple clothes, a faded blue jacket and boots scuffed from years of work. She carried no weapons, only a small toolkit filled with screwdrivers, wires, and spare parts. When Claire stepped onto Zyran soil, she felt out of place. The air smelled sweet like blooming metal, and the ground pulsed faintly under her feet. She followed the crowd to the palace, not to win a queen, but because the box called to her like a puzzle left unsolved. At the palace gates, guards in silver armor blocked her path. "You are human. They said your kind has no place here." Claire looked up calmly. "I did not come to fight. I came to try." The guards exchanged glances, then stepped aside, perhaps out of pity, or maybe because they sensed something different in her quiet eyes. Inside the courtyard, dozens of beings pushed and shouted, each trying to be the one to crack the box. Claire stayed back, watching. She saw a warrior slam the box with a hammer. It did not even scratch. A scientist poured glowing liquid over it. The liquid rolled off like rain on glass. A telepath pressed his forehead to it and screamed as if burned. After hours of failure, most gave up and left grumbling about tricks and wasted time. Claire waited until the courtyard was nearly empty. Only a few curious onlookers remained, and Queen Lyra standing silently on the balcony above. Claire walked to the stone pedestal where the box rested. She did not grab it or shake it. She simply looked at it, studying the runes. They were not letters, but shapes like waves or breaths. She reached out slowly and brushed her fingers over the surface. It was warm, not hot, but alive like a sleeping animal. She sat on the ground cross-legged and began to observe the box in different lights as the twin suns moved across the sky. She noticed how shadows played over the runes, how the air around it shimmered faintly like heat off pavement. That night, under the glow of Zira's twin moons, Claire stayed awake. She listened to the wind, the hum of the trees, the distant song of night creatures. She thought about how machines on Earth often broke, not from force but from being rushed. On the second day, she returned with a small bowl of water. She dipped her fingers and traced the runes gently. Not to erase them, but to feel their shape. The water beaded and rolled off. But for a moment the runes glowed faintly. Then fadedly. Ra watched from above, intrigued. No one had treated the box with such care. On the third day, Claire brought nothing but herself. She sat in silence for hours, just breathing slowly in and out. She remembered how her grandmother used to hum to calm nervous animals and broken clocks. So she began to hum softly, a simple lullaby from her childhood. As the notes floated through the air, something changed. The runes began to pulse with a soft blue light. The box trembled slightly, not from force but from recognition. Lyra descended the stairs, her bare feet silent on the stone. She stopped a few steps away. Her eyes wide. "You are not trying to open it," she said. "No," Claire said, still humming. "I am asking it to open." The Queen knelt beside her for the first time in centuries. She felt hope not as a ruler but as a person. By the fourth morning, the box sat between them, still closed. But no longer cold, Claire stopped humming and placed her palm flat on its surface. Not pushing, not pulling, just resting. There was a soft click like a sight. A box split open along invisible seams, not with a flash or explosion, but with grace. Inside, it was empty. A gasp rose from the few watchers. They thought Claire had failed, but Lyra smiled, tears glistening in her starlit eyes. "You see it?" she whispered. "See what?" Claire asked, confused. "The truth," Lyra said. "The box is empty, because the real gift is not inside. It is in the one who opens it with respect, not greed. You did not break it. You listened to it." Claire looked at her hands, then at the Queen. "I just wanted to understand it, and in doing so, you showed your heart." Lyra took her hand before. "The stars, I offer you my hand, not as a reward but as a promise." "But I am just a human," Claire said. "I have no power, no kingdom. You have something rarer." Lyra said, "You have stillness in a loud universe." Claire looked at the empty box, then at the glowing eyes of the alien Queen. She thought of her small life on Earth, of fixing radios and watching comets. She had never imagined this. Yet here she was chosen not for what she had, but for who she was. "Yes," she said softly. That night the twin moons cast silver light over the palace gardens, and two very different beings walked side by side, not as queen and stranger, but as two souls who had found something rare in each other. Trust in the empty box sat open on the pedestal, a silent witness to the moment. The universe proved that sometimes the greatest treasures are not things to be won, but moments to be shared. Life on Zyra changed slowly after Claire opened the box. The people watched her with curiosity, not suspicion. She did not wear royal robes or sit on a throne. Instead, she walked the silver forests with Lyra, learning the names of glowing plants and the songs of crystal birds. She asked questions and listened more than she spoke. The Zirans were used to rulers who gave orders, but Claire offered ideas. She showed them how to mend broken energy conduits with simple wire wraps instead of waiting. For rare alloys, she taught children to build small wind chimes that sang in the planet's gentle breezes, and in return they taught her how to read the sky's color shifts, to predict weatherly. Lyra found herself smiling more often. She had ruled, alone for so long that she forgot how warm companionship could feel. Claire did not flatter her or seek favors. She spoke plainly and honestly once when Lyra made a harsh ruling against a village that broke a minor law. Claire said gently, "Maybe they broke it because they were hungry, not because they were badly." Lyra paused. She had never considered that. She called back the guards and sent food instead of punishment. As weeks passed, the bond between them grew not with grand gestures, but with quiet moments, shared meals, silent walks under the twin moons, and late nights talking about their worlds. Claire spoke of Earth's oceans, storms, and fireflies. Lyra described Zyra's deep caves where light grew from the walls like flowers. But not everyone welcomed the human. Some nobles whispered in shadowed halls. They said a human could not understand Ziran ways, that she would bring weakness or worse, betrayal. One evening, as Claire worked on a broken garden fountain, a noble named Kale approached. He was tall, with sharp features and eyes that never stayed still. "You do not belong here," he said, his voice low. "You opened a box, but that does not make you." Queen Claire wiped her hands on her pants and looked at him. "I never said it did. I am here because Lyra asked me to stay," Kale sneered. "The Queen is kind, but kindness blinds her. You will leave or you will regret staying." He turned and walked away, leaving Claire alone with the dripping fountain. She felt fear, but also anger. She had faced bullies before on Earth. In school and workshop, she knew how to stand her ground. She told Lyra what happened, not to complain but to warn her. Lyra's face darkened. "Kyle has always wanted power. He sees your presence as a threat." "What will you do?" Claire asked. "He will not punish him without proof," Lyra said. "But I will watch him closely, and so should you." Days later, during the Festival of Twin Lights, a celebration where Zirans lit floating lanterns to honor their ancestors, Claire helped prepare the Lanterns in the main square, she tied ribbons and checked the glow crystals inside each one. As night fell, the square filled with music and light. Thousands of lanterns rose into the violet sky, painting trails of gold and blue. Claire stood beside Lyra, watching the beauty, when suddenly a loud crack echoed through the air. One of the great sky lanterns exploded mid-air, not with fire but with dark smoke that spread fast. People coughed and stumbled. The smoke carried a sleeping mist used only in old Zyran prisons. Claire grabbed Lyra's arm and pulled her behind a stone pillar. Guards rushed in, but chaos reigned in the confusion. Kael appeared from the crowd. He held a small device in his hand. Aimed at Lyra. "You had your chance, human," he hissed. "Step away, or she falls." Claire did not move. She looked at Kael, not with fear but with calm. "You think power comes from hurting others," she said, "but real power comes from protecting them." Before Kael could react, Claire threw a handful of glow dust from her pocket. The dust clung to his device and shorted its circuit. Sparks flew and the device fell from his handguards, surrounded him in seconds. Later, in the palace chamber, Kael knelt before Lyra, stripped of his titles, his eyes full of shame. "I only wanted to save Zira from outsiders," he muttered. "You almost hurt the one person who showed us a better way." Lyra said, her voice heavy with sadness. "Exile is your sentence, not death, because mercy is stronger than revenge." After that, the whispers stopped. The people saw Claire not as a stranger but as someone who stood for their queen. When danger came, one morning, Lyra took Claire to the highest peak of the palace where the stars seemed close enough to touch. She held out a small ring made of woven starlight and silver thread. "This is not a crown," she said, "but a promise between us. Will you stay? Not as my subject, but as my equal." Claire took the ring and slipped it on her finger. "Yes," she said, "not because I have to, but because I want to." From that day on, they ruled together, not as queen and human, but as partners. Claire brought Earth's practical wisdom. Lyra brought Zyra's ancient grace. They built schools where children learned both star navigation and simple mechanics. They opened gardens where Zyran flowers grew beside Earth seeds. Visitors from other worlds came not just to see the famous box, but to learn how two different beings could build something beautiful together. Years passed, and the story of the human who opened the empty box became legend, not because she won a prize, but because she proved that understanding is stronger than force, that kindness is not weakness, and that love does not need the same skin or sky to grow on quiet nights. Claire still hummed her grandmother's lullaby, and Lyra would rest her head on Claire's shoulder as they watched the twin moons rise. And in their garden, the obsidian box sat open on a stone shelf, not as a trophy, but as a reminder that the greatest mysteries are not solved with tools but with heart. The end. Years passed, and Zira became known not as a kingdom but as a harbor, a place where broken ships and weary souls found rest. Claire's hair grew streaked with silver, and Lyra's starlit eyes held more warmth than ever. They walked slower now, but their hands never left each other's. One quiet morning, a message came not by ship but through an old Earth frequency, a signal weak and crackling. It carried a voice Claire had not heard in decades. It was her younger sister, Lisa. The message was, "Short, help us, they are coming." Claire stood frozen in the garden, the datapad trembling in her hand. Lyra saw the change in her at once. "What is it? Earth is in trouble," Claire whispered. "The Drax, they found it." Lyra's breath caught. The Drax had not been seen since their retreat from Zyra, but rumors said they had grown stronger, feeding on fear and conquest. Now they turned their eyes to the blue planet that had sent one small woman to change a Star Queen's heart. "We must go," Claire said. Lyra did not argue. She called for the royal ship, not for war but for aid. They loaded it with healing crystals, light mirrors, and seeds that could grow in poor soil. Claire packed her old toolkit, the one she brought from Earth so long ago, as they left. Zira, the people gathered not to cheer but to send light. They held up small lanterns that glowed in rhythm like a heartbeat, a silent wish for safe return. The journey to Earth took days through silent space. Claire stared out the window, remembering oceans, thunderstorms, and the smell of rain on concrete. She feared what she would find when they entered Earth's orbit. Their hearts sank. Cities were dark. Smoke rose from coasts and forests burned. The Drax had not landed in force yet. But there, scout ships circled like vultures, poisoning the skies with fear. Claire guided the Ziran ship to a hidden valley in the Pacific Northwest, where Lisa and a group of survivors waited. They lived in caves powered by old solar panels and rainwater filters. Lisa ran to Claire, tears streaming down her face. "You came." "Of course I came." Claire held her tight, that night around a small fire. Lisa explained the world had fractured after a great storm of solar flares, knocked out power for months. Governments fell. People turned on each other. Then the Dracs came not with armies but with offers of order in exchange for obedience. Many said yes out of fear, but not us. Lisa said, "We remembered your story, the one about the empty box. We chose to wait." Claire looked at the faces around the fire, tired but unbroken. She turned to Lyra. "We cannot fight them, but maybe we can remind people what they forgot." How? Lyra asked. "By showing them that they are not alone." So they began not with weapons but with light. Claire and Lyra traveled from hidden camp to broken town, using the Ziran mirrors to project images in the sky, not of war, but of memory. They showed children playing in parks, farmers harvesting fields, neighbors sharing bread. At first people hid, but then they watched, then they cried, then they remembered. The Dracs tried to jam the signals, but the mirrors used starlight, not machines. They could not block what came from the sky itself. In one town, a Drac officer landed, demanding surrender. Claire walked out. Alone, no weapon, just her voice. "You do not have to be cruel," she said. "Your people must be tired too." The officer stared at her, then at the sky, where a mirror showed his own home world, long forgotten. He lowered his weapon and walked away. Word spread that the Dracs were leaving, not because they were beaten, but because they were seen not as monsters but as lost beings. 2. Back in the valley, Claire worked with Earth engineers to build small energy cells using Ziran crystals and old car parts. They powered lights, radios, and water purifiers. Hope grew like wildflowers after rain one evening as the sun set over the mountains. Lisa asked Claire, "Will you stay?" Claire looked at Lyra, then at the stars. "I belong to two worlds now," she said. "But my home is with her." Lyra smiled and took her hand. "We will visit often when it was time to leave." Earth stood taller, not healed, but healing. The people had remembered their own strength as the Ziran ship rose into the sky. Claire watched the blue planet shrink below. She felt peace, not because the world was safe, but because it chose to try again. Back on Zyra, the people welcomed them with songs not of victory, but of return. In the palace garden, the obsidian box sat open, catching starlight as always. Claire placed a small earthstone beside it, a gift from Lisa. "You gave them more than help." Lyra said, "You gave them back their story, and you gave me the courage to share it." Claire replied, "That night they sat under the twin moons, hand in hand, not as saviors, but as reminders that even the smallest act of kindness can ripple across stars." And in the quiet hum of the silver forest, the universe whispered its oldest truth, that love is not about where you come from, but what you choose to protect. The end. Peace returned to Zira, but not the same peace as before. It was deeper, quieter, like a river that had learned its own strength. Claire and Lyra walked the gardens more often now, not just as partners but as teachers, showing young Zyrans how to listen. Before they act, how to build. Before they break, one morning a small ship landed at the edge of the silver forest. Not a war vessel, but a humble craft with patched hull and flickering lights. A human stepped out. Her name was Dana. She wore a pilot's vest and carried a data pad that beeped weakly. She looked tired, but her eyes were bright with hope. She had come from the outer colonies where Earth's reach had thinned and supplies ran low. Her village was sick with a strange fever. No doctor could cure. They heard of a human on Zira who had healed rifts between worlds. Maybe she could help with a sickness. Claire met her at the gate, not with guards, but with a cup of warm root tea. "Come in." She said, "You are safe here." Dana wept with relief. She told of failing crops, broken med units, and children too weak to play. Lyra listened without speaking. Then she turned to Claire. "What can we do?" Claire thought a long time that night. She knew Zira had healing crystals that pulsed with life energy, but they were tied to the planet's core, not easily moved. "But what if we do not move the crystals?" she said. "What if we bring the people here?" Lyra's eyes widened. "You would open our world to strangers again." "Not strangers," Claire said. "Neighbors, It was decided Zira would welcome the sick from Dana's colony. Not as refugees, but as guests. They built temporary shelters in the lower gardens, using woven vines and soft light panels. Claire worked day and night, helping Xiran healers mix earth remedies with Xiran crystals at first. The humans were afraid of the glowing trees and whispering winds, but the Xyrans greeted them with quiet smiles and shared food without asking for anything in return. Slowly the fever broke. The children laughed again and ran through the silver grass. Their parents watched in awe as Xiran light soothed wounds that had festered for months. Dana stayed longer than planned. She helped repair the colony ship using parts Claire scavenged from old palace tech. One evening as they worked under the twin moons, Dana asked, "Why do you help us? You could have said no." Claire wiped grease from her hands. "Because once someone gave me a chance too," she said. "And kindness is a circle, not a line." Word of Zira's open. Door spread faster than any warship. Soon more ships came. Not with weapons, but with a mining crew poisoned by toxic dust. A research team stranded after engine failure. Even a group of artists whose ship lost its way in a nebulous storm. Lyra did not turn them away. She opened the palace halls, turned courtyards into classrooms, and let Claire turn old storage rooms into workshops. Some nobles worried. "We are not a charity," they said. But Lyra replied, "We are a home, and homes grow when they share." Claire taught the visitors how to speak simple Xiran words, and the Xyrans learned earth songs and hand games. Laughter became common in places that once echoed only with silence. One day, a young Xiran boy named Torin asked Claire, "Why do you care about people you do not know?" Claire knelt beside him. "Because everyone feels alone sometimes," she said. "And if I can help someone feel less alone, even for a day, then my day matter." Torin thought about that, then ran off to share his glow berry snack with a human child who looked shy as seasons turned. The visitors healed, learned, and left. But they carried something new with them. Not just medicine or parts, but a story of a planet that chose kindness over fear back on their worlds. They told others of the human who lived with the Star Queen, of the empty box that taught patience, of gardens where enemies became friends. This worried some powerful groups in the galaxy. They liked order. They liked borders. They did not trust a world that gave without. Taking a council from the Galactic Alliance sent an envoy named Illyra. She arrived in a sleek silver ship and wore a uniform stiff with rank. She met Lyra and Claire in the Hall of Mirrors. Her voice was polite but cold. "Your generosity is noted," she said, "but it disrupts the balance. You cannot take in every lost soul." "We are not taking." Claire said, "We are sharing." Illyra's eyes narrowed. "Sharing leads to chaos, or connection." Claire replied. Illyra left, but not empty-handed. She took notes and recordings, and warnings. Weeks later, the Alliance sent a new rule. No ship from Zyra could dock at Alliance ports without full inspection. No aid could be sent without approval. They called it safety. They meant control-y. Ro was angry, but Claire placed a hand on her arm. "Do not fight their walls," she said. "Build more doors." So they did. They sent small messenger drones, not with weapons but with seeds, healing songs, and simple repair guides. They taught other worlds to make their own sky mirrors, their own concaves. The Alliance could block ships, but they could not block hope. One evening, as rain fell softly on the silver leaves, Claire and Lyra sat on the palace steps watching a new ship land. This one carried elders from a dying world. Their planet was burning, and they had nowhere else to go. Without a word, Lyra rose and walked down the path to meet them. Claire followed, not behind but beside her. "Welcome," she said in their language. "We have room inside the palace." The obsidian box sat open on its shelf, catching the rain through the window, not as a relic but as a promise that some things are meant to be shared, not kept. And under violet skies, Zyra grew not in size but in heart, proving that the truest power is not in ruling but in reaching out a hand and saying, "You are not alone." The end. Months turned into years, and peace settled over Zyra like soft rain. The people no longer saw Claire as an outsider, but as one of their own children, called her Aunt Claire, and brought her broken toys to fix. Elders asked her advice on fixing old energy wells, and even the palace cooks learned to make earthbread with Zyran honey. But far beyond the violet skies, trouble stirred in the outer rim of the galaxy. A warlike species known as the Drax began to spread. They did not trade or talk. They crushed worlds that refused to bow and turned their skies to ash. Their ships were black and sharp like teeth, and their leader Vorgath claimed he would bring all life under his rule, or burn it. News of the Drax reached Zira through a damaged scout ship, its pilot barely alive. He gasped one word before dying. Drax fear spread through the silver forests for the first time in generations. Zira faced a true threat. Lyra called her council, but their plans were old. Their weapons, few they had lived in peace so long they forgot how to fight. Claire sat in the war room not as a warrior but as a thinker. She studied star maps and ship logs late into the night while others argued about shields and cannons. She asked different questions. How do the Drax move? What do they fear? What do they value? She learned they always attacked at dawn, used sonic disruptors to shatter defenses, and never took prisoners. They saw mercy as weakness. One evening, Lyra found Claire in the garden, staring at the empty obsidian box. You are worried, Lyra said. Not worried. Claire replied, just thinking the Drax break things, but maybe we do not need to break them back. Maybe we can confuse them. How, Lyra asked, by using what they do not understand. Silence, stillness, kindness, Lyra frowned. That sounds like surrender. No, Claire said, it sounds like a different kind of strength. She proposed a plan not to build weapons but to build illusions. She remembered how on Earth old lighthouses used mirrors to warn ships away not by force but by light. With help from Zyran engineers, Claire designed a network of sky mirrors, powered by the planet's natural energy. They would not shoot beams but bend light and sound to make Zyra appear empty or broken from space. But we must also prepare for the worst, she added. If they land, we cannot fight them head-on, but we can hide our people in the deep caves and leave the cities looking abandoned. Many nobles disagreed. This is cowardice, they said. But Lyra trusted Claire. She gave the order to build the mirrors and train the people in quiet movement. No loud voices, no bright fires, just stillness. Weeks passed and the Drac fleet appeared on the edge of Ziran space, their ships dark against the stars. Vorgath himself led them, expecting easy conquest. As they neared Zyra, they saw a planet with dead lights, cracked towers, and no signals. It looked already ruined. Vorgath growled. This is a trick scan for life. The scanners showed faint heat, but no movement. No voices, no machine. She ordered a landing party of 50 warriors to check the surface. They stepped onto the silver soil expecting resistance, but found only wind and empty streets. The palace gates hung open, the gardens overgrown with fake vines. Claire and Lyra had planted. Confused, the Drax moved deeper into the city. Then the mirrors activated light bent around them, making walls appear where there were none. Paths twisted back on themselves and soft hums filled the air. Not loud, but unsettling. Like a whisper in the dark, the Drax fired their weapons but hit only reflections. Their own shouts echoed back, distorted. They began to argue. Who is there? Show yourself, hidden in the high trees. Zyran watchers dropped small pods that released calming. Mist, not poison, just a gentle vapor that made eyes heavy and thoughts slow one by one. The Drax grew drowsy, not from harm, but from confusion and fatigue. They sat down, then fell asleep by dawn. The entire landing party was unconscious. Not hurt, just resting from orbit. Vorgath watched his warriors go still. He tried to call them, no answer. He sent another ship. It too went silent. Fear unlike anything he knew crept into his heart. This planet did not fight it, simply made his strength useless. He ordered, retreat, as the black ships turned and fled. Lyra and Claire stood on the palace balcony watching them. Go, you did it, Claire. Lyra said softly, we did it. Claire replied, it was not my idea alone. It was ours. In the days that followed, the people celebrated. Not with weapons raised, but with songs of peace. They honored the mirrors, the caves, the quiet courage it took to trust a new way. Vorgath never returned. Word spread among the stars that Zira was protected not by armies, but by something stranger, something the Drax could not crush because it had no shape. No edge, just presence. Claire became known not as a warrior, but as a guardian of peace. Schools taught her methods not to avoid danger, but to meet it with wisdom. One evening as they sat in their garden, Lyra turned to Claire and said, do you ever miss Earth? Sometimes, Claire said, but not like before. Earth is in my heart, but Zira is my home. Lyra took her hand and pressed it to her chest. Feel that, she said. Your name beats in here now. Claire smiled. and leaned her head on Lyra's shoulder above them. The twin moons rose and the obsidian box sat open on its shelf, still empty, still full of meaning years. Later, when travelers asked how Zira survived the Drac threat, the elders would say, "We did not win a battle. We offered a question and the enemy had no answer, and in the heart of the palace 2 women, one born of stars, one of soil, sat together, not as ruler and savior, but as friends who proved that the softest light can scatter the darkest shadow." Their story became a beacon not of war but of wonder, a reminder that sometimes the bravest thing is not to strike but to stand still and let the world see your truth. And so under violet skies and silver trees, peace grew. Not because danger never came, but because love learned to wear many forms, even silence, even light, even an empty box held open with hope.